We are creatures of desire. What we most desire is meaning. What makes us suffer most is a lack of meaning.
The Meaningful Life with Andrew G. Marshall. Marital therapist, author, and communications trainer Andrew G. Marshall invites guests from all walks of life to discuss what makes life meaningful.
Hello, I'm Andrew G. Marshall, and welcome to The Meaningful Life. We're available on Apple, Spotify, Podbean, and wherever you find your podcasts. How well do you deal with criticism? If you're like me, probably not very well at all. The temptation is to justify, get defensive, or go on the attack. How good are you at giving negative feedback to your partner about things you can no longer grit your teeth and bear? Probably not very good. You can easily come across as overly critical, patronizing, or simply nagging. But being able to speak your truth and hear your partner's truth, even if it's different or hard to take on board, are important relationship skills. That's why I'm going to do a deep dive into the topic of criticism today. JACK Bohannon is a relationship coach and former avoidant who helps individuals and couples resolve problems and break patterns caused by their attachment issues. He uses a form of role play drawn from the work of Daniel P. Brown and also from the Somatica method to help people re-experience tricky relationship moments in the therapy room. We're going to be doing one of these later in the podcast, looking at how to deal with criticism, with me being the client and Jack being the coach. So hopefully won't be too critical of me. How did your... I'm just teasing you, don't worry. How did your childhood prepare you to be a relationship coach?
Yes, my childhood inspires a lot of my work. That, of course, our childhood forms us in many ways, for better or worse. It sets some of the directive for our life. And you introduced me as a former avoidant. And this is fascinating to a lot of people, that someone with an avoidant attachment style would be engaged in this type of work or sympathetic to people who are having emotional experience, because someone who develops an avoidant attachment style is often pretty detached from their emotions and avoidant of conversations that are difficult. So it's really inspired me to connect with my emotions more and better. Some of the mental health experiences that I had early in my life set the directive for healing, for therapy, for men's work. And it's been a long journey to the richness of being human. And I love how you're introducing this topic today around criticism, because it's a way that we disconnect and fall down in our relationships a lot. That it is so frequent that we don't do feedback well. We'll call it feedback. Like, hey, I have some firm feedback for you. And I'm excited to explore the topic of boundaries, because that's so important in this work, and knowing what it feels like to receive some feedback or criticism and to track that through the body gives us a lot more awareness of how we respond to our partners. And it's critical too in terms of childhood experiences, because when we're fighting with our partner, our little kids are out. Our inner children are running the show. And they really aren't the best representatives of our interests or the interests of our partner.
So before you did this work, if your partner had some criticism of you, how would you respond?
I would shut down in one way or another. I would feel really threatened by that conversation, and I would be defensive or leave. So I'd take it personally. Absolutely. And beyond just criticism, a request for me to meet her needs, such that, hey, I just don't feel like you're there. I don't feel like you're emotionally embodied right now. I don't feel like we're connecting. That's not criticism exactly. But to me at the time, really threatening.
It can very easily be heard as criticism. You're not doing what I need. That's criticism.
Yeah, it is in a way. It's like, hey, your behavior's not lining up somehow. There's like a kernel of criticism in that. But it's not the personal indictment that I felt it to be. At the time, the interpretation on my end was, you are failing as a person. There's something really wrong. Even I don't love you was the vibe there, because how could she be dissatisfied with my essence and who I was as a person, how I was attending to her, and then also at the same time, whole and human and good. So I felt really defensive, and I felt like it was an impossible situation. And I often would withdraw or speak against whatever she was saying in defense of myself.
Because your inner child was terrified.
Yes. Existential threat.
So you were in a relationship for 20 years, which sounds for an avoidant something for the Guinness Book of World Records. How did the end of that relationship impact on you, and how did it begin your journey to change?
I'd say my journey to change started well within that relationship, or even before it, that my personal struggles and how I was meeting reality, how I was meeting relationship was pretty obviously off earlier in life, even before that relationship began. And I'm so grateful to that former partner for being such a steadfast companion and support, and my perfect opposite in all the things that I needed to see and work through. And she was, in fact, a therapist. So during our time together, she became a therapist. There's all this intellectual understanding there, but we still have our issues that are playing out in horrific self-awareness that, like, yeah, we get it. Like, there's so much that we're repeating, and that's so frustrating, maddening, in that at one point I had earned a lot of understanding of myself. I really got it in detail. And at the same time, all these compulsions to be defensive or withdraw or disconnect were there. And the same on her side, that she was doing her side of the dance, which was more an embodiment of the anxious aspect of attachment and security.
I love the idea that your former girlfriend had been doing so much work, she thought, well, I might as well get paid for it and become a full-time therapist.
And I did the same. I'm like, wow, I graduated that relationship. I have several master's degrees, the school of the hard knocks, so to speak, and a phenomenal ability to process emotion and communicate and hold that. When that relationship ended in a friendly way, I found that, wow, relationships are actually pretty peaceful and easy at times. You know, there's a lot of ease that's possible if we're communicating well, if we don't embody that defensiveness, if we're able to stand in our center. Connection is beautiful. This is the best part of life. And it doesn't need to be so fraught or dramatic.
So you did a lot of work in men's groups. Now, why is it important for men to be in men's groups? Because I don't think this is actually said enough.
There are a lot of reasons it's important for men to be in men's groups. I believe that a men's group is a place to talk about everything that you don't talk about outside the men's group, which is a nondescript way of describing that. But it is...
So no football, no beer conversations.
Exactly. We are not talking about a drinking club whatsoever. It's more like co-facilitated group therapy with a strong directive for challenge in life. How are you actually living? Are you in your fullness of accountability, honesty, openness, humility? Are you doing your work? And it's a safe container for doing that work. It's a safe container for being open, because with openness comes vulnerability. And there's something that men get shot down for in that. We've been coached away from our emotions by men and other women. So to have that space to be full, not vulnerable as the goal, but to be in our fullness and to experience that with other men is beautiful. And I know you've done some men's work too, Andrew.
Yes, I'm running a men's retreat this September just outside Berlin, where I live. So I'm a great believer in men's work, but I'd just be interested in hearing from you why that's different from doing that same work with a woman, for example.
The gender divide is really interesting. How we change, how we show up based on whether it's a co-ed group or a group of men. There's a particular type of healing that has a male vibe that is best performed in the presence of men, especially in the realm of emotionality, where we are reconnecting with ourselves in that way. And it's a little unclear. I don't have a phenomenal specific answer for you on that. But the vibe is different in a circle of men versus a co-ed group versus being in a relationship with a female therapist. And maybe you've noted this in your clients, but
Well, I think that the minute you've got a female a female therapist, we immediately have mother in the room, whether she's older than you or younger than you, she has that authority figure. And if you have a male authority figure, you're dealing with father work, and mother work and father work are really quite different. I think the other big difference I find is that if there's a woman in the room, the men start competing to be top man. And they can still compete to be top man, but it's less when there's not a woman in the room. So I think you're dealing with different material. And most men, I'm afraid, have a father wound, that there's material from their father that needs to be addressed. I mean, often there's a mother wound as well, but I see far more father wounds. Generally, men say to me, mothers are wonderful, fathers are crap, is the sort of message I get. I don't know what your experience is.
Yes, there is a father wound and a social father wound. There's a collective father wound as well.
So tell me about the collective father wound.
It's cultural, that we've detached from our fathers overall, and that we see so much performance in our society where we are encouraged to earn our worth in particular ways. That if we do enough, if we earn enough, if we achieve enough, then somehow we arrive at personhood as men. And there's no one who's ever told us you're right. There's no one who's ever told us you're good. There's no one who's ever told us you are a bona fide human, you are initiated, you are legitimate, you are whole. So without that structure in place, we're left seeking that as men. When do I arrive at personhood? Is this struggle. It's this vague sense of where is my ground? Where is my legitimacy? How can I earn that? What do I need to do? We're just perform. And a lot of our society is structured in that way, where we just need to keep performing all the time. And that's the definition of our goodness, our worth, our selfhood. And without the structure in place for someone to initiate a man, to say, you are bona fide, it's difficult to stop doing that. I see that as a wound.
What I find is really interesting is if at the beginning of a group and you've got an all-female group and you say, could you please introduce yourself? And, she will say, I'm Sharon and I'm married and I've got 2 children, will be the way she will probably introduce herself. If you've got David, he will say, I'm a vet. And you might even have to ask him if he's married. So profession comes first. Women will talk about relationships first.
Yes, that resonates.
So do you think men and women deal with criticism differently?
I think men and women administer criticism differently. That men will be much more direct in how they're critical, and they're more critical of actions or behaviors. I believe women are more prone to criticize the person or try to fix the person. They'll see a holistic issue there that's relational and how the person is in relationship. That's a generalization too. It goes a lot of different directions.
But I think there's a lot of truth in your generalization, though.
Yeah, there's some fairness to that. But also, I don't intend to speak for anyone or any wide group of people in how they administer criticism or respond to it.
So let's look at attachment theory, because this is one of the areas that you're particularly interested in it. So perhaps you could talk to me a little bit about what attachment theory is, but let's still stay with that overarching sense of criticism and how the different attachment styles will possibly have a different relationship with criticism.
Attachment theory has played a huge role in my life. So I have some lived expertise in that. And then when I selected a particular modality to learn as a coach, I realized that it was really effective for that. So the Somatica Institute offers a mode of sex and relationship coaching that is very relational and it's very attuned. And it addresses some of those attachment issues in a very direct way because it's so experiential that we're reconditioning the way that we do relationship or building skills around that. That's my history with attachment theory. And then to describe it generally, it's the exploration of how early relationships and experiences influence our patterns in later relationships. And when people learn about it, even just gain some superficial understanding, they're able to identify their own patterns in relationships. This is why it's so popular right now, is it's useful. It applies pretty generally and well and roughly. So everybody can kind of see what their role is in a relationship. And to simplify it to the extreme, there's one person who prefers less intimacy and often feels overwhelmed by emotional intimacy. And then another person who's left questioning whether they're loved, whether this is sufficient. They're doing the reaching. They're the one who initiates contact, who initiates closeness, and the other person feels overwhelmed by it and runs away. To completely simplify, that's the upshot. And then there are other modes of attachment too that are troubling. Ultimately, it's great when we can have secure attachment and someone is able to be independent from their partner and then also in connection. Feels comfort with closeness and having someone depend on them, but also doesn't need to have that circumstance to feel okay. They're able to be independent in the world.
And I think if you're securely attached, and so you're not going to feel that some criticism is the end of the world because you feel happy and secure in your relationship. And yes, your partner is annoyed because you leave your socks balled up, so they have to open them up to put them in the washing machine. Can you guess who does that? But, I can cope with that criticism because I don't think my partner's going to leave me because I sometimes forget to do it. But if you are anxiously attached, these are the ones who want to get closer. How do they respond when they're either criticized or they've got something to be critical about?
People with insecure attachment will interpret criticism more personally and as more of a threat overall. So I see both anxious and avoidant attached individuals as suffering from some degree of worth wound, where their selfhood is in question. And yes, absolutely, people will respond to criticism differently. People respond to trauma differently based on the health of their attachment system. It's been shown that people can experience very, very similar trauma and have it affect them differently. They can be abused by the same priest in the exact same orphanage. And based on their attachment conditioning, they're either very affected by that or not. So in terms of how we respond to all sorts of events in our life and all sorts of actions from our partner, it's profoundly influential.
So we're going to do a role play. So tell me about this role play, how it works, because we haven't rehearsed this. We're just going into this complete and utterly blind. So tell me what we're going to do. Why are we going to do it? And what do you want from me?
We have not rehearsed this. This is exciting. So this is an example of the type of work that I do that's experiential. So it's actually being in relationship with somebody or setting up some facsimile of relationship where it's a controlled process. And this is one of those processes, and it involves boundaries. So when we are in relationship with somebody or when we're at work, we may know that we're getting stressed out and we need to speak for ourselves. We need to respond. And a lot of the time we don't have much awareness of what's happening in our body and our being. And we let things get to a point of overwhelm where rather than having it be a 3 on the 10-point scale of distress, when we speak, we should speak at a 3 or a 4, this is too much for me, or I need to sit and be mindful and listen to this person, depending on the circumstance. But we reach a point where, hey, I need to self-regulate. And if we don't have awareness of what's going on inside of us, we might very well reach a 10. And at that point, we're responding very poorly to criticism. So this process is a way of looking at what's going on in your body and increasing your awareness when something is stressful, when something is somebody is pushing on your boundary. And it starts by getting complete consent from the client. Like, we structure this very clearly that we're going to say, okay, go. And before we do that, we determine what's a good topic to work on around how their boundaries are pushed. For some people, it might be criticism, that they're in a profession where their boss is chronically critical of how they perform. So if that's an example, if that's a way that their boundaries are often crossed, we can use that. And maybe we're talking about, their sales totals. Like, I really need you on this program. I really need you to increase your sales by 30% this month. And why aren't you doing this? And we watch, as I say those things, as I role play that boss, they watch their arousal state go up. They watch themselves and their body respond until they know exactly when their boundaries are touched. And at that point, they say, okay, that's enough. This process lets you re-experience what's right for you, because we often forget it. We forget it into should. We say, oh, I should be this way, or I see their point and I agree with them, but actually we've far exceeded what's right for us. So to start off, Andrew, is there a way that you're frequently criticized? Is there some core wound that it would be interesting to play with?
Well, I have a long-term difficult relationship with criticism. I'm getting far better at it, but particularly as a child, I used to find it very difficult, and I would sort of act out. And I don't think anybody likes criticism, so I'm partly doing this for all my clients that hate criticism too. But, if I get criticized by my partner, I always feel de-skilled, I suppose. Here I am, somebody who's spent 40 years in a counseling room helping people, and you sometimes feel like you're, 7 years old again.
Yeah. And here you are, a therapist. I understand that conundrum, that issue of like, all right, I'm a relationship coach. Why aren't I much better at relationship? De-skilled is an interesting word.
Do you know an old-fashioned phrase that the cobbler's children are the worst shod?
Yes, the cobbler's children go barefoot. Absolutely. Yeah. Yes. It's the truth. We're in this profession for a reason, and you're a remarkably skillful person, actually, but it's so easy to trigger that. So there may be some way that your partner addresses you that doesn't feel good, and it could be useful to know when you touch on that boundary and when that inner child is likely to come roaring out if that boundary isn't respected. So to find a circumstance where that's happening, help us out with that. What is the typical narrative around that in terms of an escalating intensity of criticism?
Well, it's not an escalating level. It's sort of like guerrilla material. So it's not a constant state, but suddenly I'll be hit because I live in my mind quite a lot of the time. I'm thinking about, shall I have Jack on my podcast or not? And, what am I going to ask him? So I'm away, it looks like I'm there, but I'm also thinking of 300 other things at the same time. And so, I will do things like serve myself some water first at lunchtime rather than being a thoughtful partner and serving my husband first. Mm-hmm. So those sort of little thoughtless things, because I'm in my head, will get a guerrilla attack, along with a bit of martyrdom sort of thrown in at the same time. And though that combination, I suppose, of failing and not being a thoughtful and good enough, that's very good at pushing my buttons.
Mm-hmm. I see. Yeah. Okay. So that's something to work with. That's something, that's some message that I can deliver to you. Yes, that's good. And then the really key part of this is centering up in your body and feeling where neutral is now. And I imagine you have some sort of mindfulness practice.
Yes.
Where you have some degree of awareness of your body. And you know where calm is. You know where neutral is and how to get at your center and sit in it.
I should warn you, I'm just slightly over that place because the nature of a podcast and the fact we're doing quite personal material and it's sort of got me off the neutral space. So I'm a little activated.
Good awareness.
say like 5% over neutral.
Okay.
So not bad, but just so you're aware.
Yeah, I feel it too. I'm with you on that. You have to be on the ball right now. That's great awareness. And you know that you're on, but also centered enough to say that. And when you're ready, I'll start delivering some of those somewhat critical messages, and you can watch your body respond. And when you get that clinch, that flinch where it's, this isn't good, you can raise your hand and say, that's enough.
Okay. So just so that people know, I've got my eyes closed now. I've just been doing some breathing exercises, and I'm sort of like 1 or 2% over neutral at the moment. So I'm ready, and I won't raise my hand because nobody will be able to see that. I'll say that's enough.
So, Andrew, I noticed you didn't serve me water first at lunch. I just am sitting here and I see you serving yourself first all the time. That you're not even thinking of me. And I start to wonder, like, if you care about me at all, and you are so inconsiderate that I just don't feel like you're even here. I watched your shoulder move just a little, Andrew, like just a little. And sometimes in that process, go ahead.
This is a question. You know, I can feel it rising, but when's the point to act? So, you know, inconsiderate, that really got me. But I was sitting there saying, was it enough to stop you?
That is the question. That's like the human question of where is my line on that? And you got to watch yourself experience that and try to figure out where that line is. And sometimes we'll let our boundaries bend. We'll let them, this is a situation where I actually want to hold my breath a little bit and get the best outcome by not stating my boundary or not responding. And then there's another situation where we might. And I imagine you have a very high threshold for discomfort and staying with something that's difficult. And I watched your shoulders move just a little bit. And sometimes clients don't know where their boundaries are. And I stop the process that I'm watching your face twitch around. Like, we've so clearly exceeded what's comfortable for you. And it doesn't feel relevant for you to share that. You're so used to taking on abuse or criticism.
Let's not call it abuse in this case. Criticism, I think, would be the right word.
Fair. So some clients are so used to taking on that criticism that they don't know where their boundaries are and don't have a very fine-tuned response system. And these things apply in other ways too, in terms of their response in receiving kindness, their response in expressing what they need. We're kind of out of touch with our bodies and in our head. So by looking at that and examining that, we have more power and control. So after that little exercise, we might unpack whatever was going on for you. If you felt a tightness in your stomach, what your thoughts were, impulses.
Well, the thought was, particularly when you said inconsiderate, was I was feeling defensive. I wanted to say, you know, just because I poured water for myself before you doesn't make me inconsiderate. You know, I never do say this, but inside, because I'm not that stupid, but inside I want to say, well, you know, I did this for you, I did that for you, and I do all these other things for you. But I don't say that because there's no point having a I'm right and you're wrong type of argument. But those things are beginning to get triggered inside me.
Yes. You thought that's incorrect. Wrong.
Well, not so much it was incorrect. It was just, I think, unfair because, you know, I was inconsiderate. But it's a little unfair.
Yes, that's a judgment. Inconsiderate is a judgment and subject to some debate. And that brings us to how people convey criticism. There's a reason that that other person is saying, you're inconsiderate. There are feelings behind that judgment. I would call it an interpretation or a judgment. So to separate those out is really helpful. To come at your partner with a different message entirely, rather than you're inconsiderate because this happened. We can say, this happened. I felt this way. Can you do this differently?
So I'm upset that you didn't pour water for me first, because in my opinion, that's the polite thing to do.
Way better. Way better than...
I could hear that without too many problems.
For sure. yeah, hear that without as many problems, probably have a more skillful response.
So if you're going to actually give some feedback to your partner, what I think I'm hearing you saying is you have to own the piece of information you're about to give. Not all right thinking people would agree with me that actually pouring water for yourself first is rude. So that's a blanket statement about lots of other people. It's not actually owning it. It was, I felt neglected. I felt upset when you did A, B, C. And now you're the expert on you. So I'm more than happy to accept that you would be upset that I did that.
Yes, it absolutely helps to separate those things out. And it's really difficult to come to our partner with our feelings first, because ultimately we're saying, I feel hurt. I feel like you don't care about me. I'm in a place of questioning my worth or our connection. And it's difficult to lead with that message rather than, you're neglecting me. You blew me off, would be the interpretation in some situations where the feeling actually is, I feel hurt, I feel afraid. Those are difficult things to lead a conversation with.
And you can also put in things like, in my opinion, this, from where I'm sitting, this, and that makes it slightly different from a value judgment, which could be up for debate. I mean, in other houses, if you have come from a family where there's, 15 people sitting around the table, you have to grab it quick or you won't get anything to eat, sort of kind of stuff. It's going to be very different from a family where there's, 2 parents and 1 child.
We have all these differences of experience where we're interpreting things differently because we've had a different history than our partner. So yes, if you come from a large family and this is how it works, you just serve yourself. That's a sensible way to operate as humans. But for someone else, that could be a real offense to their value. And separating out feelings from interpretations allows us to sort some of that out. And then the other thing that really helps in conflict on the receiving criticism, receiving feedback side is to sit with that, to sit with how your partner feels first, to extend empathy before trying to create a repair, before speaking your truth about it or what it means to you, to be empathic and to hold them in whatever feeling that they're having and try to step into their shoes before speaking in your defense or trying to reassure them even. Because so often we want to reassure our partner. We're like, oh, I didn't mean it that way. I love you. And that comes across as dismissive ultimately, that it's much more effective for them to feel felt and to feel held in empathy of, oh, I see why that would be hurtful to you. That must have felt really dismissive.
I often suggest actually just repeating back, I call it reflecting back what you've just heard. So instead of getting defensive, you say, I've just heard that you were upset that I served myself first rather than being a generous person and serving you first. And that also buys me a bit of thinking time. So I'm not actually going straight back into my childhood wounds. I'm sort of here in my adult self.
I love it. It buys you thinking time. I'll try it. It's brilliant.
So in the example we played, I was supposed to say stop when you triggered me. You can't say to your partner, stop criticizing me, because that's just going to encourage them to do more. So when I feel that stuff inside me, what am I supposed to do?
That's a brilliant question. And a brilliant thing about that exercise is that you get to experience it and say stop. You get to understand your truth in your body without being in that hot moment with your partner. And it really depends. You can agree with your partner that you're able to say stop, to recognize that this is an emotionally charged conversation. Or you could, like in that exercise, raise your hand until they ask, why the heck are you raising your hand right now? So there are many ways that you can agree with your partner to monitor your experience and connect more intentionally. Other than that, it depends on the situation you're in. And if you're not with your partner, if you're with a boss, you may need to respond in one way. If you're with a friend, you might respond in another.
So let's have the boss situation. What should you do? You can see your boss is doing the constant criticism thing, and you want to be able to put your hand up and say, no more. But you can't, because your boss will think you've gone mad. So how do you deal in that situation?
That's difficult because there's a very strong power dynamic there. And work is one place where we do let our boundaries bend, where we do accept criticism in a way that feels bad because we don't have the power to speak otherwise. But in terms of managing your boss, I personally would do so from a place when I'm not emotionally charged. So knowing my own reaction level is very useful in that, such that if I'm able to relay a message in a skillful way, a skillful moment, I'm much more likely to get a better outcome. If I'm able to think about that and process it out more. And most people won't respond to their boss's criticism in an immediately forceful way where you're saying, hey, that doesn't feel good to me. That's just not how most workplaces function.
Sadly.
Yeah, sadly. So that's a time to be a little more tactful and even strategic in how you relay that message.
So more, I want to present myself as my best, but there's only so much criticism I can digest in one time, and verbally doesn't work particularly well for me. You know, could we find a different way of you giving me negative feedback? I'm happy to receive it, but at the moment I'm just being overwhelmed and I can't process it. And that's not good for you and it's not good for me.
Yes. And I hear you emphasizing shared values there, that there's still an objective in the workplace, that you're looking to be more effective. And that's a good thing to relate to your boss. It's not about your feelings as the primary driver in that situation. It's how you're able to respond effectively. And it sounds like you're already problem solving on their behalf too, figuring out a different format for receiving feedback. That's going to make you more effective. It's going to make your boss more effective. So I imagine that good managers would be open to that. I imagine that good managers would be open to that.
And the one thing that's changed my relationship with criticism when I was young was something that I think I'm going to share today, and that is criticism can be a gift, that it is going to give you something that could be positive, that you could learn something from it. So the thing that actually also helped me a lot with criticism is I am in a writers group, and you have to give criticism and you have to receive it. And you begin to learn that they're not saying, oh, instead of saying, darling, that was wonderful, they're actually looking at particular things that aren't working. And that is a gift. Somebody's actually spent enough time looking at your writing to say, I liked this bit didn't work for me, I didn't understand that. I mean, it's quite a skill to give that criticism, but it's also a very good skill to be able to receive it. And the central part of being able to do that is seeing it as a gift.
Criticism can be very caring. Absolutely. It means that there is a tension there, an intention too. And that repair process of feeling that there's some rupture, there's criticism, and then you come back together, that really strengthens a relationship. It feels like a relationship starts when you start having arguments or conflicts.
So in a moment, we're going to be looking at a personal story that's been written into us, and that's happening after this.
The Meaningful Life with Andrew G. Marshall. Please follow us on Twitter, like us on Facebook, and visit our website, andrewgmarshall.com/podcast, where you can join our supporters club and unlock bonus material and other benefits.
My men's retreat runs from Sunday the 28th of September to Wednesday the 1st of October in the woods just outside Berlin, Germany. Step out of your daily stress. Take stock of where your life is going and deepen your relationship with yourself and other men. One of the reasons everyone feels more anxious is not just the fast-changing world, but how we've become more isolated. In particular, we are cut off from the wisdom and support of other men, mostly because we find it difficult to open up and be truly vulnerable with each other. In my 4-day workshop with a group of like-minded men, we can focus on what it means to be a man today and how we can support our sons to become balanced men. It will be a truly transformative experience, and I would like to share it with you. You can find out more about the beautiful location, the seminar house itself, and the costs on my website, andrewgmarshall.com. Click on the button Men's Retreat. Do it now because we've almost filled half the places.
Breaking ground or leveling up your fleet? Pape Machinery is ready to help. For a limited time, get 0% financing for 48 months on all John Deere compact construction equipment. Strong, precise, and built for any job site, John Deere compact machines give you the power to dig, lift, and move with ease, even in tight spaces. Act fast. This offer ends June 30th, 2025. Visit Pape Machinery today. Pape keeps you moving. Some restrictions apply. See dealer for complete details.
You want to deliver the best retail experiences, but it's hard, especially with multiple stores, staff, fulfillment centers, GMVs, KPIs, OKRs, and the only thing harder is being in charge of it all. But when you switch to Shopify Point of Sale, you can unify retail operations and guarantee smooth shopping across every location. Shopify POS, the best retail experiences without complexity. Visit shopify.com/without complexity to learn more.
If you'd like to participate in the program, you can go to my website, www.andrewgmarshall.com/podcasts, and there's a participate in the program section. I have everything I need in my life. I have a great job with lots of responsibility and travel. I have a beautiful home and a circle of good long-term friends. My children have grown up to be smashing adults, and beyond the usual day-to-day anxieties, they are both doing well. I'm truly blessed. There's just one problem. I'm alone and I haven't had a serious relationship for 5 years, since the man I lived with moved out. If I'm honest, I'm terrified of being hurt again. My track record with men is not very good. I always seem to end up with manipulative men who claim to like strong women, but subtly put me down and undermine me. The father of my children left when I had cancer and needed his support the most, but claims I drove him away. How can I possibly open myself up again?
Wow. I'd start with compassion. That individual needs a lot of compassion above direction. There's hurt there. And there may be ways that she can control that and take more empowering responsibility going forward. But that's hurtful. She was hurt. So that's where that starts for me. It sounds like a lot of the situations of my clients where in some way, for some reason, their man picker is broken, that they connect with the same type of difficult partner and have a lot of the same patterns of neglect or abandonment or someone who isn't there emotionally. So there may be something in her makeup, in her personal background that leads her to that type of partner. That's something to look at and something that she could potentially recondition through having some experiences of coaching or therapy where she is practicing boundaries or practicing receiving and coming to a place of more secure attachment where she's less susceptible to find chemistry with a difficult partner.
So there's something about finding chemistry with difficult people that I sort of would like you to pull out and help us understand.
Yes. I've heard it said that we marry our unfinished business. So in my life, I definitely found a partner who was my perfect complement for just making each other crazy, for pulling out all of the work that we needed to do personally in terms of therapy or self-understanding and growth. So this might be happening for that person, but I hesitate to presume at the same time. I know that we find our perfect partner over and over. This is such a theme for my clients that I end up with narcissists. They seem great at first, and lo and behold, I've picked another narcissistic partner or someone who is half out the door all the time. The reasons that they do that, I think, are that they're trying to solve their parent. Whatever that original source of insecure attachment was and distress is something that we carry with us in our life. And ideally, we just find that perfect surrogate for our parent. And we would prove ourselves and access their love when we know that it's actually not there and it's not our desire to change anyone. It's not appropriate to change anyone.
So using yourself as an example, how did your 20-year relationship activate your material from what I'm assuming would be your mother?
Absolutely. In my case, my experience of my partner was often overwhelming, that there was a lot of emotional distress there that I wasn't equipped to manage. And it was on me to develop that capacity to respond to that, maybe not manage it, but respond to it and sit with it. And a strong call from her to be emotionally present when I absolutely was not. So beyond the dance of I pull away, she reaches towards, there was a strong way that I could develop myself. There was a strong call to be more emotionally present. And I found a partner who was fantastic at demanding that and quite forceful about it. And for her, she was probably left sitting with herself in her distress sometimes. As I was unavailable, she re-experienced that, and we did a lot of healing there. We did a lot of growth work in that relationship, and a lot of our connection was around that pathological dynamic of me pulling away and she reaching towards. When that faded, some of the magic faded too.
And sometimes what we think of as passion is sort of anxiety, old trauma, the excitement that maybe this time round we're going to sort it out, but we're actually going with exactly the same skills we had before.
Something feels arousing and familiar at the same time. And arousing can mean two things. It can mean either anxiety or excitement. It can mean joy or danger. When something feels engaging like that, when it feels arousing and then also familiar, that's like, ooh, we've got it. This is chemistry. This is the relationship for me. That's the path that we go down. But we might not be operating with a healthy mindset or new skills, as you said. So common for people to do that.
So we've got a new relationship, and the way we tell if a new relationship is, a keeper or not is our feelings, and if we feel excited and activated. So how do we know if it's, the same old, or whether this is, for want of a better word, a genuine connection? And are we throwing out somebody who doesn't actually make us feel this and is maybe good on paper too readily?
We don't know what we don't know. So we all have blind spots. And that puts us in a difficult place when selecting a partner, that of course you want to feel connected to them and excited about things. But that woman who wrote in, she might be excited about those things for the wrong reason, and find a partner who resonates with what's dangerous, anxiety provoking, and also familiar. So she may, in that limited awareness, which we're all subject to, she may go find the wrong partner again. And it's a really interesting question of how you're able to select a healthy partner if you don't have a healthy background. So therapy can help with that. Coaching can help with that. If you're re-experiencing some of the critical parts of a relationship in terms of knowing what you need, knowing what you want, how you receive, how you give, where your boundaries are, that leads us to a place of individuation where we're secure in ourselves and feeling more complete. And at that time, we're probably going to find a better partner than if we feel like desperate or distressed about our aloneness, or even in a place of fear about being hurt. If we feel more solid self-stability in all of our relationships, then we're able to choose a better romantic partner.
So I think we've reached the point of the program where I have to ask you, as a witness on the meaningful life, what makes your life meaningful?
Connection makes my life meaningful. Connection is a beautiful thing. So it's how we define ourselves as humans. We are not isolated. We are in relationship all the time. And my existence, my definition, is set by how the other people in my life are responding to me or treating me. So I'm this relational being, and I travel a lot. I find myself traveling a good deal. That can be kind of a lonely thing. I'm reaching for connection in these ways, and fortunate to have it with friends long distance. But it really highlights for me how important human connection is for us in our happiness. So life is just relationships. Beyond anything that we're producing in the world, it's how we affect other people and how we show up in other people's lives.
So in a moment, we're going to move on to our bonus material, and we're going to be discussing how attachment theory can transform your relationships. And if you want to hear the bonus material, you can subscribe directly via Apple or Spotify. And if you want to become a supporter of The Meaningful Life and unlock the bonus material this way, here are the details.
You've been listening to The Meaningful Life with Andrew G. Marshall. You can follow Andrew on Twitter, like him on Facebook, and please leave a review wherever you consume your podcasts. Making, editing, and distributing The Meaningful Life comes with substantial costs, and we'd like to ask for your help. Visit our website, andrewgmarshall.com/podcast, where you can join our supporters club and unlock bonus material for every program, send in a letter to be discussed by Andrew and his guests, and join a community of other people seeking to make their life meaningful. At the gold level, you get even more benefits. Production of The Meaningful Life with Andrew G. Marshall is by Michael Dooney. Social media by Madeleine Healy. Sound engineering and theme tune by Sebastian de la Luz Mendoza. And I'm Susie Colick. Please tell your friends and spread the word. Thank you.
Breaking ground or leveling up your fleet? Pape Machinery is ready to help. For a limited time, get 0% financing for 48 months on all John Deere compact construction equipment. Strong, precise, and built for any job site, John Deere compact machines give you the power to dig, lift, and move with ease, even in tight spaces. Act fast. This offer ends June 30th, 2025. Visit Pape Machinery today. Pape keeps you moving. Some restrictions apply. See dealer for complete details.
This podcast is sponsored by Talkspace. You know when you're really stressed or not feeling so great about your life or about yourself? Talking to someone who understands can really help. But who is that person? How do you find them? Where do you even start? Talkspace. Talkspace makes it easy to get the support you need. With Talkspace, you can go online, answer a few questions about your preferences, and be matched with a therapist. And because you'll meet your therapist online, you don't have to take time off work or arrange childcare. You'll meet on your schedule, wherever you feel most at ease. If you're depressed, stressed, struggling with a relationship, or if you want some counseling for you and your partner, or just need a little extra one-on-one support, Talkspace is here for you. Plus, Talkspace works with most major insurers, and most insured members have a $0 copay. No insurance? No problem. Now get $80 off of your first month with promo code SPACE80 when you go to Talkspace.com. Match with a licensed therapist today at Talkspace.com. Save $80 with code SPACE80 at Talkspace.com.